you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, also, before we get too deep, we've been going for about 4.5 hours. If you've been enjoying the stream, hit the follow button on Twitch, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, like the goddamn YouTube stream, and please, for the love of God, consider dropping those subs, donos, super chats, etc. Because your donos make this stream possible, and I need to live. So, you know, you help me out, I provide you with content, bada bing, bada boom, I get to live. Anyway, consider it. Here we go.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all. Okay, we gotta get to some business. We gotta get to some business. Okay, thank you all. Okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, please, thank you, please, thank you so very much.
Oh, Tom Flory, I would encourage you not to antagonize the mods. They will ban you. But yeah. Otherwise, you're fine to disagree. Just don't antagonize the mods. It won't end well for you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Okay, let's get to business. Let's get to business. All right. So let me start by thanking my most incredible husband, Doug, for being an incredible
No gods but sub-gods. No dogs by Dono Dogs.
Salmon Moose, thank you for the 5 gifted tier 1 subs, and I feel like you should know. We also we have a new emote, everybody. We have a new emote, okay? If you're unaware of our emote options, I added a new one. All right? We got the Dono Ghost, everybody.
Partner to me, an incredible father to Cole and Ella, and happy anniversary, Dougie. I love you so very much. To our president.
You're also free to dislike the stream. That's fine. I'm just letting you know that, like, if you're like calling the mods names, you're probably gonna get banned. You have great amount of leeway to disagree with me and be even disrespectful towards me, but like, not to my mods. They don't get paid enough to deal with that shit.
Joe Biden. When I think about the path that we have traveled together, Joe, I am filled with gratitude. Your record is extraordinary, as history will show.
Yep, we got it. We got to glaze Joe Biden. Got to give him the glaze. Just got to make sure he's satisfied.
And your character is inspiring. And Doug and I love you and Jill and are forever thankful to you both.
No, the joke is that they don't get paid, Spitfire. Though, if I ever get big enough, if I ever get bigger than Hassan, my mods will be paid. I would really like to.
And to Coach Tim Walls, you are going to be an incredible vice president. And to the delegates and everyone who has put your faith in our campaign, your support is humbling. So, America, the path that led me here in recent weeks was no doubt unexpected. But I'm no stranger to unlikely journeys.
Oh, wait.
So, my mother, our mother, Kamala Harris, had one of her own. And I miss her every day, and especially right now.
I want to make sure that, like, I heard that correctly. Her mother's name is Shamala. Okay. I'm taking in this information.
And I know she's looking down smiling. I know that. So my mother was 19 when she crossed the world alone.
Shamala, Kamala,
Some don't know
Mamala.
love, to make up for bringing some sad vibes. Keep your joy, folks, don't let others bum you out. It's a tough season, but it is seasonal. Cheers.
Thistles Fries, thank you for the $10 super chat. And also, you haven't brought any sad vibes, okay? It takes all kinds of vibes to make a community, and like you consistently bring great ones. So like if you have a rough day, that's okay. We'll take that as a community, and we'll deal with it together and support one another, all right? Thank you so much. And I hope your day turns around, or night, or tomorrow things turn around. There we go.
Traveling from India to California with an unshakable dream to be the scientist who would cure breast cancer. When she finished school, she was supposed to return home to a traditional arranged marriage. But as fate would have it, she met my father, Donald Harris, a student from Jamaica. They fell in love and got married, and that act of self-determination made my sister Maya and me.
It's actually really wonderful.
Growing up, we moved a lot. I will always remember that big Mayflower truck
Dark Engine.
packed with all our belongings, ready to go to Illinois, to Wisconsin, and wherever our parents' jobs took us. My early memories of our parents together are very joyful ones. A home filled with laughter and music, Aretha, Coltrane, and Miles. At the park, my mother would say, "Stay close." But my father would say, as he smiled, "Run, Kamala, run. Don't be afraid. Don't let anything stop you." From my earliest years, he taught me to be fearless. But the harmony between my parents did not last. When I was in elementary school, they split up. And it was mostly my mother who raised us. Before she could finally afford to buy a home, she rented a small apartment in the East Bay. In the Bay, you either live in the hills or the flatlands. We lived in the flats. A beautiful working-class neighborhood of firefighters, nurses, and construction workers, all who tended their lawns with pride. My mother, she worked long hours.
Also, I just have to say this, having like been through like the areas of Brooklyn where the firefighters live. Like if you live in the area like firefighters live, I feel like that's good vibes. You know, firefighter bars way better than cop bars, okay? Just I feel like that says something pretty profound about the respective professions.
And like many working parents, she leaned on a trusted circle to help raise us. Mrs. Shelton, who ran the daycare below us and became a second mother.
Also true, Fire Force is a great anime.
Uncle Sherman, Aunt Mary, Uncle Freddie, Auntie Chris. None of them family by blood, and all of them family by love.
Hey, Cronian. Yeah.
family who taught us how to make gumbo, how to play chess, and sometimes even let us win. Family who loved us, believed in us.
Oh, Legala DeVille, they have attacked her in regards to her father. They claim that her father wasn't really black because he's descended from a white slaver in Jamaica. Except that her father's black, and the reason he's descended from a white slaver is because white slavers raped their slaves. So, like, the attacks on her father and her, by extension, have been particularly weak. Yeah, no, like, Mr. Miyagi, it's really shocking how many conservatives are like, if you look far enough back in her family tree, her ancestor was one of the most prolific white slavers in all of Jamaica. It's like, why are you guys treating that like a gotcha when it actually speaks to something incredibly horrific? Like you guys know how slavery works. But then I remember a lot of Republicans just genuinely don't really acknowledge the evils of slavery.
And told us we could be anything and do anything.
No, they didn't go with the absentee father tactic because the issue with that, MW, is that it's the wrong racist dog whistle. Because they've been trying to say that Kamala Harris isn't really black. And if they go with the absentee father tactic, that confuses the dog whistle for them. Like their tactic here is to try and paint her as a fake black person who's secretly actually an Indian. But the problem is that mixed race people exist, and that's very inconvenient for their narrative and for the desired usage of their dog whistles. Yeah.
They instilled in us the values they personified: community, faith, and the importance of treating others.
Everyone's like, she's Indian, she's this, she's that. What does it matter? Well, it shouldn't matter, except for one crucial thing. The American, context is deeply, deeply racist. So people in America really, really care when someone is not white. And they really, really care about what kind of not white a person is. In fact, it's so common for white people, in particular, to care about what kind of non-white they're talking to, that one of the first questions a lot of, older white people will ask someone who has even remotely darker skin is, "Oh, what are you?" Not like that can be one of the second questions asked. "Oh, what's your name?" "Oh, you have a very interesting skin color. What are you?" Or, "Where are you really from?" Because they want to know, kind of where in the hierarchy of race the person they're talking to kind of falls into, you know? "Where are you from?" "Oh, no, I mean originally." Yeah. Followed up by, "Can I touch your hair?" True. Also, yes, a lot of white people in America consider Jews non-white. Yep.
As you would want to be treated, with kindness, respect, and compassion. My mother was a brilliant, 5-foot-tall, brown woman with an accent. And as the eldest child...
And Phosphorus, it's not wrong to ask somebody about, their family history. I think that's a perfectly fine question to ask. It's just that that's not the reason most people ask in, the first conversation or two of knowing someone, you know? there's not really a reason why an acquaintance on the subway needs to know what your ethnic history is.
As the eldest child, I saw how the world would sometimes treat her. But my mother never lost her cool. She was tough, courageous, a trailblazer in the fight for women's health, and she taught Maya and me a lesson that Michelle mentioned the other night.
Wait, I had to explain to a young libertarian that Kamala Harris can be two brown races at the same time. And then when she gets accolades regarding one over the other, it usually is because one ethnic background of hers already has said accolade, but the other half doesn't. Yeah. Yeah. Asian people getting the question from a certain demographic of what are you? Yep, exactly. Yeah. But it's like, again, and maybe this is just me, but like, that is never one of the most important or pressing questions I want to or need to know about somebody. Like, if you're curious about that, get to know them in other ways first, and then like ask them in a way that is like actually human if you want to like know more about like their cultural like background, you know? Like, it's really not that hard to just be interested in someone as a person, and then like, you know, as you get to know them, learn more about their background. Like, that's not that hard of a thing to do. You don't need to listen to the knee-jerk response in your brain to like know what someone else's ethnicity is. You know, just throwing this out there, as a white person, no one ever asks me about my ethnic background. You know, that's not a question I ever get asked. Like, I think it's fair to like to kind of like show that same courtesy with other people. What's your ethnic background? Hey, friend Shonen. My ethnic background is Viking pillagers, and by that, of course, I mean Swedish potato farmers. A little bit of Irish, a little bit of Norwegian, like 50 Irish, not Irish, Swedish and Norwegian, plus a little bit of Irish sprinkled in there.
Just ask what is their cultural heritage and they'll probably, and proudly, tell you their cultural heritage.
Yeah, for sure. But like, also maybe don't ask it first thing. I think that's a weird. I wish more people would show a bit more introspection about the knee-jerk things they want to know about other people, you know? Like, why is it so important to you to know about the ethnic or cultural background of another person? Like, have a bit of introspection there and maybe like examine why you feel a compulsion to know that about someone to such a degree that you can't just like get to know them as a person first and like have that knowledge come to you organically. You know, like interrogate why you want to know that stuff.
She taught us to never complain about injustice.
I don't know, it's fun to talk to people of other cultures and experience other cultures, at least for me.
Yeah, for sure. But like, if you just walk up to a stranger and you're like, "Hey, what are you?" Or like you walk up to a coworker and you're like, "Hey, where's your family really from?" Like, again, there are socially acceptable ways to go about like finding out that information, and like putting such an emphasis on it that you ask immediately, I think is deeply weird and off-putting.
justice, but do something about it. Do.
Like if you're curious about someone's culture, like go to a cultural festival about that, you know? Like you can actually go and educate yourself in more appropriate venues to learn than harassing a stranger about it.
Something about it. That was my mother. And she taught us, and she also taught us, and never do anything half-assed. And that is a direct quote. A direct quote.
Yeah, exactly, Dark Engine. Exactly.
I grew up immersed in the ideals of the civil rights movement. My parents had met at a civil rights gathering, and they made sure that we learned about civil rights leaders, including the lawyers like Thurgood Marshall and Constance Baker Motley.
Okay. We're straying a bit too far from like the actual speech here, but I'm gonna let Stardust Bun kind of be the last word on this. Asking someone, "What are you?" carries the same weight as asking a gay couple, "Who's the husband and who's the wife?" Yeah, no, exactly. Unironically, I do think it's a bit similar. Like, it's information you aren't entitled to, that you are asking for, and it comes across as deeply off-putting. And I think that, like, people in the context of, like, asking someone about, like, the sexual relationship of a couple, when it's none of your business about that, I think that's clear that that's, like, none of your business, right? Like, I think that that's a pretty clear line. But for a lot of white people in particular, they don't know how weird it is to ask that question. You know? They don't know how weird it is to ask, "What are you?" And fellow white people, let's stop doing that, huh? Let's be a bit more human.
Those who battled in the courtroom to make real the promise of America. So at a young age, I decided I wanted to do that work. I wanted to be a lawyer. And when it came time to choose the type of law I would pursue, I reflected on a pivotal moment in my life. You see, when I was in high school, I started to notice something about my best friend, Wanda. She was sad at school, and there were times she didn't want to go home. So one day I asked if everything was all right, and she confided in me that she was being sexually abused by her stepfather. And I immediately told her she had to come stay with us, and she did. This is one of the reasons I became a prosecutor, to protect people like Wanda, because I believe everyone has a right to safety, to dignity, and to justice. As a prosecutor, when I had a case, I charged it not in the name of the victim, but in the name of the people. For a simple reason. In our system of justice, a harm against any one of us is a harm against all of us. And I would often explain this to console survivors of crime, to remind them no one should be made to fight alone. We are all in this together.
So far,
And
this has
every
been a pretty
day-
good speech.
In the courtroom, I stood proudly before a judge, and I said 5 words: Kamala Harris for the people. And to be clear, my entire career, I've only had one client, the people. And so, on behalf of...
Unfortunately, Mr. Miyagi, there is a lot of racism in America and a lot of very specific and pointed racism directed towards mixed race people. Um, it sucks. But that's one of the reasons why like so many people just don't understand that people are multi-ethnic. Like they don't get it. They're like it has to be one or the other, and it sucks. Like I've seen it happen to like my friends and loved ones, and it sucks to see how alienated they are from like both sides of themselves, you know?
Of the people, on behalf of every American, regardless of party, race, gender, or the language your grandmother speaks, on behalf of my mother and everyone who has ever set out on their own unlikely journey.
True, Dark Engine. I think
on
that is true.
behalf of Americans like the people I grew up with, people who work hard, chase their dreams, and look out for one another. On behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America. And with this election,
Progressive squirrel.
Our nation with this election has a precious, fleeting opportunity to move past the bitterness, cynicism, and divisive battles of the past, a chance to chart a new way forward. Not as members of any one party or faction, but as Americans. And let me say, I know there are people of various political views watching tonight, and I want you to know, I promise to be a president for all Americans. You can always trust me to put country above party and self, to hold sacred America's fundamental principles, from the rule of law to free and fair elections to the peaceful transfer of power. I will be a president who unites us around our highest aspirations, a president who leads and listens.
I'm kind of hearing like a transition into a more like authoritative rhetorical position, which I think is a smart move specifically for this type of speech. This is going to be, for a lot of people, her first real appearance. Like most people who aren't deeply plugged into politics, which is most people, are not going to have seen her speak before this. So this is kind of the this is a good move for her in this moment. I'm just wondering what she's going to say about policy.
Who is realistic, practical, and has common sense, and always fights for the American people. From the courthouse to the White House, that has been my life's work. As a young courtroom prosecutor in Oakland, California, I stood up for women and children against predators who abuse them. As Attorney General of California, I took on the big banks, delivered $20 billion for middle-class families who faced foreclosure, and helped pass a homeowner Bill of Rights, one of the first of its kind in the nation. I stood up for veterans and students being scammed by big for-profit colleges, for workers who are being cheated out of their wages, the wages they were due, for seniors facing elder abuse. I fought against the cartels who traffic in guns and drugs and human beings, who threaten the security of our border and the safety of our communities. And I will tell you, these fights were not easy, and neither were the elections that put me in those offices. We were underestimated at practically every turn, but we never gave up, because the future is...
So far, this is a good showing from her rhetorically, and I think that it's going to play extremely well with the Democratic base and probably with independents as well.
Always worth fighting for. And that's the fight we are in right now, a fight for America's future. Fellow Americans, this election is not only the most important of our lives, it is one of the most important in the life of our nation. In many ways, Donald Trump is an unserious man. But the consequences of putting Donald Trump back in the White House are extremely serious.
Over on YouTube.
Consider not only the chaos and calamity when he was in office, but also the gravity of what has happened since he lost the last election. Donald Trump tried to throw away your votes. When he failed, he sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol, where they assaulted law enforcement officers. When politicians in his own party begged him to call off the mob and send help, he did the opposite. He fanned the flames. And now, for an entirely different set of crimes, he was found guilty of fraud by a jury of everyday Americans, and separately found liable for committing sexual abuse. And consider what he intends to do if we give him power again. Consider his explicit intent to set free violent extremists who assaulted those law enforcement officers at the Capitol. His explicit intent to jail journalists, political opponents, and anyone he sees as the enemy. His explicit intent to deploy our active duty military against our own citizens. Consider the power he will have, especially after the United States Supreme Court just ruled that he would be immune from criminal prosecution. Just imagine Donald Trump with no guardrails, and how he would use the immense powers of the presidency of the United States, not to improve your life, not to strengthen our national security, but to serve the only client he has ever had, himself. And we know what a second Trump term would look like. It's all laid out in Project 2025, written by his closest advisors.
True.
And its sum total is to pull our country back to the past. But America, we are not going back. We are not going back. We are not going back. We are not going back to when Donald Trump tried to cut Social Security and Medicare. We are not going back to when he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, when insurance companies could deny people with pre-existing.
Yeah, Mr. Miyagi, that's kind of what I'm taking away from this so far. I think the main impression people are going to have of this speech is that she seems presidential. She seems like you can see her as president, you know? It's it's very unfortunate because, like, I want a president who can articulate way more policy. And we're just not going to get that this time. We might not get that in our entire lifetimes, frankly, but this is what plays well with the base. And maybe if we as progressives, as leftists, build more power in the Democratic Party, we can actually, like, have the kind of candidates we want. But right now, this is kind of what a candidate needs to do to establish themselves as viable in the modern political context.
Existing conditions. We are not going to let him eliminate the Department of Education that funds our public schools. We are not going to let him end programs like Head Start that provide preschool and childcare for our children. America, we are not going back. Charting a new way forward to a future with a strong and growing middle class, because we know a strong middle class has always been critical to America's success. And building that middle class will be a defining goal of my presidency. And I'll tell you, this is personal for me. The middle class is where I come from. My mother kept a strict budget. We lived within our means, yet we wanted for little. And she expected us to make the most of the opportunities that were available to us and to be grateful for them. Because, as she taught us, opportunity is not available to everyone. That's why we will create what I call an opportunity economy, an opportunity economy where everyone has the chance to compete and a chance to succeed. Whether you live in a rural area, small town, or big city. And as president, I will bring together labor and workers and small business owners and entrepreneurs and American companies to create jobs, to grow our economy, and to lower the cost of everyday needs like health care and housing and groceries. We will provide access to capital for small business owners and entrepreneurs and founders. And we will end America's housing shortage and protect Social Security and Medicare. Now compare that to Donald Trump, because I think everyone here knows he doesn't actually fight for the middle class. He doesn't actually fight for the middle class. Instead, he fights for himself and his billionaire friends. And he will give them another round of tax breaks that will add up to $5 trillion to the national debt. And all the while, he intends to enact what in effect is a national sales tax, call it a Trump tax, that would raise prices on middle-class families by almost $4,000 a year. Well, instead of a Trump tax hike, we will pass a middle-class tax cut that will benefit more than 100 million Americans.
I hope that she centers the child tax credit. I hope that she does, because honestly, that's maybe one of her best policy proposals that she was championing in 2020. But I would like to see that kind of come to the forefront.
Friends, I believe America cannot truly be prosperous unless Americans are fully able to make their own decisions about their own lives, especially on matters of heart and home.
Well, the child tax credit was allowed to lapse because of Republicans, and honestly, it was like one of the best and most effective ways of eliminating child poverty in America. And Kamala Harris had a proposal that would reinstate the child tax credit and basically boost the amount of money impoverished families get from the child tax credit. It would basically it was something like $6,000 a year or something spread out across 12 months. It goes a long way towards eliminating child poverty, and we know we can do it because of COVID.
But tonight, in America, too many women are not able to make those decisions. And let's be clear about how we got here. Donald Trump handpicked members of the United States Supreme Court to take away.
So far, this is a decent speech, but I'm a bit worried because of what I've heard in the aftermath of this speech that I'm about to get pretty upset.
Reproductive freedom. And now he brags about it. In his words, quote, "I did it and I'm proud to have done it," end quote. Well, I'll tell you, over the past 2 years, I've traveled across our country, and women have told me their stories. Husbands and fathers have shared theirs. Stories of women miscarrying in a parking lot, developing sepsis, losing the ability to ever again have children.
Yeah, here's what I'm talking about, by the way, in case anyone is like, whoa, what do you mean, a $6,000 tax credit? Harris wants to give a $6,000 tax credit to parents of newborns, which, frankly, I think that should be extended from newborns to, I don't know, 10-year-olds, but, you know. Yeah, good stuff.
All because doctors are afraid they may go to jail for caring for their patients. Couples just trying to grow their family, cut off in the middle of IVF treatments. Children who have survived sexual assault, potentially being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. This is what's happening in our country because of Donald Trump. And understand, he is not done. As a part of his agenda, he and his allies would limit access to birth control, ban medication abortion, and enact a nationwide abortion ban with or without Congress. And get this, he plans to create a national anti-abortion coordinator and force states to report on women's miscarriages and abortions. Simply put, they are out of their minds. And one must ask, why exactly is it that they don't trust women? Well, we trust women. We trust women. And when Congress passes a bill to restore reproductive freedom, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. In this election, many other fundamental freedoms are at stake. The freedom to live safe from gun violence in our schools, communities, and places of worship. The freedom to love who you love openly and with pride. The freedom to breathe clean air and drink clean water and live free from the pollution that fuels the climate crisis. And the freedom that unlocks all the others, the freedom to vote. With this election, we finally have the opportunity to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. And let me be clear.
Good policies.
And let me be clear.
Good policies
After
here.
decades in law enforcement, I know the importance of safety and security, especially at our border. Last year, Joe and I brought together Democrats and conservative Republicans to write the strongest border bill in decades. The Border Patrol endorsed it.
I'm sorry.
Here, Joe and I brought together Democrats and conservative Republicans.
Ain't that some shit? All right, transitioning here. You know, and hey, they said she didn't talk about trans people in her speech. Am I right? Haha. Well, here she is transitioning.
To write the strongest border bill in decades. The Border Patrol endorsed it. But Donald Trump believes a border deal would hurt his campaign.
We wrote a conservative bill to make the border situation worse.
So he ordered his allies in Congress to kill the deal. Well, I refuse to play politics with our security, and here is my pledge to you.
Like, you guys, you know that if we win, you could just, like, do a non-bipartisan bill that doesn't have bad conservative ideas in it, right? Like, you could just, like, have a bill or push a bill that just funds the border bureaucracy and administrative costs of processing, like, millions of asylum claims. Like, you could do that. You could do that and make the system a lot easier and faster and more responsive without, like, making it a draconian, like, police state type of bill.
As president, I will bring back the bipartisan border security bill that he killed, and I will sign it into law. I know we can live up to our proud heritage as a nation of immigrants and reform our broken immigration system. We can.
Sure, reforming our broken immigration system would be great, but you don't do that by making it harsher on immigrants.
Create an earned pathway to citizenship and secure our border. And America, we must also be steadfast in advancing our security and values abroad. As Vice President, I have confronted threats to our security, negotiated with foreign leaders.
Okay, I have a question regarding this. Like, it's not a good bill, and whatever version we're going to get is going to be shit. Is it possible they could amend it? There was an internet bill where they recently did this. It's not great, but they changed it so it wasn't as bad as Republicans were hoping it'd be. Yeah, of course they could always amend the bill as it goes through the process. The main issue is that I don't have faith in the Democrats to actually do that. None of the communication around this has indicated that they would do that. So, like, to answer your question, they could make it less bad or make it more good, but I don't think they're going to do those things. Is she trying to appeal to the conservative voters, or are the Democrats just crappy about the border in general? So honestly, Marco DeSoon, this is a very good question. Like, I think that generally speaking, one of the weaker, that there are two major weaknesses when it comes to public perception of Democrats. And one is that they are weak. And that weakness tends to be related to issues of national security. And that includes like immigration, crime, military, stuff like that. The other major problem is that Republicans tend to be considered better when it comes to the economy because, unfortunately, despite the fact that it has been a go-to line for decades now, a lot of the American public still thinks, we'll run the government as a business, is like a really compelling thing to say. And Republicans tend to be from more business-oriented backgrounds, so it tends to be like a popular talking point for them. And yeah, like those two things being kind of the main problem in the eyes of your average low information voter leads Democrats towards wanting to overcompensate. Because again, and I know that this might be really difficult to imagine, but like, you guys, by virtue of being here and watching my streams, are more informed about electoral politics than like 95% of Americans. So like, you guys already know so much more than your average voter. And so part of the issue is when you have like this pre-existing perception of Democrats, the conventional wisdom for Democrats in like the speech that they know is going to be seen by the most normie people of their election season campaign, which is this one, they want to go hard on things that they would typically feel like they would look weak on. Border, crime, military, economy, right? And that's what she's doing in this speech. She's definitely trying to compensate for that. And I think she's doing a very good job of making that appeal. I just deeply dislike that I deeply dislike those policies. That's kind of my problem, and the problem of like progressive politics. It's that the median low information voter is not necessarily the person with the best politics, and so making those appeals to them often results in pursuing policies that are just objectively bad. At the same time, I see people trying to dunk on Democrats on the military by claiming they'd take the U.S. into all sorts of wars. Yeah, but that's I would Marco Dissoon. Frankly, those attacks are disingenuous. Like whatever amount of hawkishness you can attribute to Democrats, Republicans are 1,000 times more hawkish. Republicans are absolutely like more bloodthirsty. Like John McCain would like walk around literally singing bomb 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 Iran. like they will like cavort on stage at the prospect of bombing other countries. Donald Trump, like they will say, oh, the Democrats might take us into a war, while at the same time saying Donald Trump is actually a really great guy to have leading our country because you never know what he's gonna do. Maybe he'll bomb North Korea. Who can say? He's crazy. And it's like, that's insane. That like, nah. Those people are absolutely more bloodthirsty. That being said, there are definitely Democrat hawks that are extremely deranged in that regard as well. Just on the whole, Republicans are much worse. He's saying bomb Iran to the tune of Baran? Yeah. Can I find that clip?
It's well documented that we have, for quite a long time now, known where the real problem is in the Middle East. And in fact, the president adequately described it as the axis of evil. I guess my question is, how many times do we have to prove that these people are blowing up people now? Never mind if they get a nuclear weapon. When do we send them an airmail message to Tehran?
I mean, I also think it's bad to be a left-wing war hawk. I think it's bad to wish war at all.
That old Beach Boys song, Bomb Iran? Bomb, bomb, bomb. Anyway.
Yep. Anyway, John McCain, everybody.
Strengthened our alliances, and engaged with our brave troops overseas. As Commander-in-Chief, I will ensure America always has the strongest, most lethal fighting force in the world. And I will fulfill our sacred obligation to care for our troops and their families, and I will always honor and never disparage their service and their sacrifice. I will make sure that we lead the world into the future on space and artificial intelligence, that America, not China, wins the competition for the 21st century, and that we strengthen, not abdicate, our global leadership. Trump, on the other hand, threatened to abandon NATO. He encouraged Putin to invade our allies, said Russia could, quote, do whatever the hell they want. 5 days before Russia attacked Ukraine, I met with President Zelensky to warn him about Russia's plan to invade. I helped mobilize a global response, over 50 countries, to defend against Putin's aggression. President, I will stand strong with Ukraine and our NATO allies. With respect to the war in Gaza, President Biden and I are working around the clock because now is the time to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done.
I mean, like, this is a good response. I'm glad to see this rhetoric getting up to someone running for president. Is she going to go into more specifics on how she would plan to do that?
And let me be clear, I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself, because the people of Israel must never again face the horror that a terrorist organization called Hamas caused on October 7, including unspeakable sexual violence and the massacre of young people at a music festival. At the same time, what has happened in Gaza over the past 10 months is devastating. So many innocent lives lost. Desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety over and over again. The scale of suffering is heartbreaking. President Biden and I are working to end this war such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination.
Okay. So, a couple of things here. And you know what? I'm gonna let her continue to see if like that was the end of this particular segment.
And know this, I will never hesitate to take whatever action is necessary to defend our forces and our interests against Iran and Iran-backed terrorists. I will not cozy up to tyrants and dictators like Kim Jong-un who are rooting for Trump.
Okay. That does seem to be the end of that. So, yeah, the main issue, as many of you are pointing out in chat right now, is that we've heard this rhetoric before, and it rings extraordinarily hollow when it's what we hear like every week from the Biden administration. Like, oh, we're working really hard on getting that ceasefire deal. Are you though? Because like every day that you delay is hundreds more Palestinians die. Every day that a deal is not made, people die. And the State Department keeps putting out statements, keeps dodging questions about supposed investigations into murdered children like Hind. Like, it's been too long. Tens of thousands of people have died. And frankly, from the point of view from someone outside of the administration, we are sending them bombs that are capable of busting bunkers. We are sending them munitions that are capable of leveling cities, and they are being used to that effect. Something like 80% of all all homes in Gaza have been destroyed or rendered uninhabitable. And that was numbers that I looked at like a couple months ago. And we could simply, with US influence, and this is not me being like hippy dippy pie in the sky about it. The reason Israel is able to take these actions, the reason a ceasefire is not immediately accepted and negotiations continued from there, is because the US allows the conflict to continue. We send the weapons uninterrupted. We post our naval warships off the coast to ensure no one else intervenes. We offer diplomatic immunity on the global scale for these actions. And all the while we play this game of like, oh, well, we're very mad at Benjamin Netanyahu. He's, he keeps telling us he's going to do something about it. And then every time we get a deal, he says no. And he says, oh, but I won't do it next time. We just have to meet the right deal. And the answer is he doesn't want a deal. That's the answer. The answer is Benjamin Netanyahu is drawing this out for as long as possible because he doesn't want to go to jail. Because if he gives up the war powers he currently has, he's going to be imprisoned for fraud. He's been facing down those charges for years now. He attempted to overthrow democracy just last year by introducing legislation that would have made him a dictator, that would have overridden the court system in Israel. Right now, they're trying to antagonize Hezbollah and broaden the conflict. I think like just within like the last day or two, over 100 Israeli warplanes bombed hundreds of targets across Lebanon. It is wild to me, but it's very simple to curtail this aggression. And oftentimes, by the way, guys, I'm not going to tell you that there's a simple solution to geopolitical problems, because often it is incredibly complicated and nuanced, but not in this particular case. Israel is only able to do the things in Gaza that it does. They are only able to antagonize Hezbollah to the extent that they are currently doing because America arms them, because America sends countless military vehicles and ammunitions to them, and because we offer them protection diplomatically and economically. We need to rescind that protection on all levels yesterday, until such a time as they come to the table and negotiate. And if that means that they have to oust Netanyahu to do that, then they should do that. What's your take on the UAE breaking with France? That really happening? I genuinely have no idea. I'm more concerned about like the centrist coup going on in France right now. Like that's far more concerning to me. And I'm tired of hearing all of the hollow rhetoric of, we need a ceasefire, we need a ceasefire. It's good that a presidential candidate is saying that. Don't get me wrong. We do need a ceasefire. But I want to hear what she's going to do to secure that ceasefire. You know? And part of the difficulty here with Kamala Harris, and this is pretty important, is that she likely cannot come out and say at this particular juncture what she would do specifically to bring about a ceasefire. As vice president, she can't affect any immediate change in her position. And it is only when she is elected president and becomes president that she'll be able to actually do anything about this particular situation. So there's also the political reality of AIPAC. an organization that has committed about over $100 million to running against any Democrat that comes out against Israel, essentially. And that is that has the potential to hit a lot of down ballot races, has the potential to hit swing states particularly hard. Yeah, Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman got taken out by that money. But all of that is really, really overshadowed by the fact that the DNC basically serves at the beck and call of the presidential candidate. If you are the person being backed by the DNC, you have the ability to pull strings behind the scenes to get things done, at least within the DNC world. And one of the big stories coming out of this has been how the DNC blocked any attempt to have a Palestinian voice on the stage during their multi-day extravaganza. And that's frankly pretty bad. If you're a political strategist who's even half awake, you'd want to make sure you get at least one voice on stage during the DNC. You can pick the right voice who's going to be friendly enough to Democrats. You could have done that, but they didn't. And that really makes me worried about Kamala Harris's commitment to actually getting a ceasefire. I think that she will try, and I think that she'll be better than Biden. But I would really like to have more confidence that she's actually going to take material action in order to affect that outcome. And unfortunately, I think because of the political realities of AIPAC, I don't think we're going to get that type of reassurance until after she's in office. Reed, we have a content suggestions channel on the Discord. How much do we know about how the average voter, as far as how much we need to be pro-Israel? Mr. Malachite, I believe most Democratic voters support a ceasefire. The main issue isn't average voter knowledge. The main issue is the amount of AIPAC money that can be tactically deployed on a massive scale to turn elections. I mean, I think a lot of it is the PAC. They have $100 million in the war chest, and if you're a down ballot race, even the tiniest fraction of that is enough to bury you. A lot of local and state level races turn on very small amounts of money. And on top of that, and this is the other concern, it's that if she does come out against Israel in a hard way, or in a way that is perceived as hard, Benjamin Netanyahu is by and large cornered by his position right now. He needs to make sure that this war continues. Both selfishly for his own reasons, but also for his political party's reasons. The entire premise of Likud right now is rabidly genocidal. And Well, frankly, if he gets wind that Kamala Harris might try to put pressure on Israel materially, I think that there's a decent chance that he would scramble to deliberately incite a wider conflict. And that would be devastating for basically everybody involved. I mean, the PAC isn't what is keeping Harris from stopping Israel. Well, no, I mean, right now, what's stopping Kamala Harris from stopping Israel is the fact that she's vice president. The vice president can't, like, take geopolitical action. She doesn't have the power to affect anything like that. Like, it's a delicate situation and a delicate dance, and frankly, all of the indicators are that, like, this is about as far as she can communicate any type of pushback at the given time. Maybe as we get closer to the election, we'll see like rhetoric around more material pressures on Israel, but I doubt it. Well, but Eeyore explores, she can't unilaterally declare the president unfit to serve. Like, it has to be her and the majority of the cabinet secretaries. Like, that's not gonna happen. Well, the main thing is, Shadamar, it is geopolitics, but also it's geopolitics that are directly affecting, like, the political strategy on the ground in America right now. You know, like, there's I don't think you can just examine the geopolitics in a vacuum.
Who are rooting for Trump. Because, you know, they know he is easy to manipulate with flattery and favors.
And Blueberry Bumblebees, yeah, for sure. That's exactly what she's trying to do in this speech, which is why it rubs a lot of lefties the wrong way. You know, like, she's riding the line and she is not explicitly talking about what she's going to do in this very pivotal issue that means a lot to a lot of people in a lot of very important swing states. And we're just not going to get the specifics on this, at the very least, if we get them at all, you know, prior to the election. It's going to be like the week before, you know?
They know Trump won't hold autocrats accountable because he wants to be an autocrat himself. And as president, I will never waver in defense of America's security and ideals, because in the enduring struggle between democracy and tyranny, I know where I stand and I know where the United States belongs. So, fellow Americans,
Oh, I agree with you, Logic.
fellow Americans, I love our country with all my heart.
What changes between a week before the support of AIPAC not being revoked? Yeah, I mean, basically, if we're like a week out from the election, it's real hard to like suddenly drop, you know, $100 million to attack your campaign. You know, you're freed up in like the last few days prior to election day because it's a lot harder to like spend that money effectively. So like that's why I would say like I wouldn't expect any kind of concrete material plan vis-a-vis the ceasefire until that time.
Everywhere I go,
If not until after the election.
everywhere I go, in everyone I meet, I see a nation that is ready to move forward, ready for the next step in the incredible journey that is America. I see an America where we hold fast to the fearless belief that built our nation and inspired the world. That here, in this country, anything is possible. That nothing is out of reach. An America where we care for one another, look out for one another, and recognize that we have so much more in common than what separates us. That none of us has to fail for all of us to succeed. And that in unity there is strength. You know, our opponents in this race are out there every day denigrating America, talking about how terrible everything is. Well, my mother had another lesson she used to teach. Never let anyone tell you who you are. You show them who you are. America, let us show each other and the world who we are and what we stand for. Freedom, opportunity, compassion, dignity, fairness, and endless possibilities. We are the heirs to the greatest democracy in the history of the world. And on behalf of our children and our grandchildren and all those who sacrificed so dearly for our freedom and liberty, we must be worthy of this moment. It is now our turn to do what generations before us have done, guided by optimism and faith, to fight for this country we love, to fight for the ideals we cherish, and to uphold the awesome responsibility that comes with the greatest privilege on earth, the privilege and pride of being an American. So let's get out there, let's fight for it, let's get out there, let's vote for it, and together let us write the next great chapter in the most extraordinary story ever told. Thank you. God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you all.
Okay, so my immediate reaction is that is going to go over very well with your median voters. It's going to go over very well with, you know, libs in the base. It's gonna be received very well because it plays into the American mythology. It addresses the perceived weaknesses of Democrats. it is unfortunate, but like the perpetuation of the American mythos is like kind of a prerequisite for being president or being perceived as presidential. So I would guess that like by the end of this week we'll see like some pretty significant bumps in her approval rating versus Trump. We got a few glimpses at different policy positions in there, but like nothing super substantial. Mostly like we got a lot of gesturing towards, the middle class, the promise of tax cuts for the middle class, assistance when it comes to like home ownership. We got like a lot of desire to project strength via our military and our diplomatic ties. I think that this plays really, really well, and that's really unfortunate. I think if you are a leftist and you're frustrated with this, just know that it's because we have a lot of work to do. We have the Herculean task of dragging the median voter along with us. We have to slog through the entire swamp and quagmire of lib politics in order to try and like achieve the barest minimum of our like reforms to try and make the world a better place. It's a lot. I heard a lot of people disliked her speech and wished she spoke more about policies. Do you think this will really help the polls? I think that this speech will help with the polls, yes. I think most Americans don't particularly care about, explicit policy positions. I wish more did. But unfortunately, we live in the middle of a political reality where, like, people care more about the vibes. When Bernie dies, the left will be set back a bit. Yeah, I do have some hope that like some members of the squad can like pick up where Bernie left off, but it's gonna take time to build up a reputation and an amount of power and prestige like Bernie Sanders had. Yeah, Mr. Malachite, that's kind of where I'm at. I wouldn't say I'm happy with the speech, but I do think that this was basically like when I was talking about a couple weeks ago about how you shouldn't put Kamala Harris or Tim Walz on pedestals. I think that video actually came out yesterday on the YouTube channel. This is what I meant, like you can't put Kamala Harris and Tim Walz on these pedestals because they will let you down. At the end of the day, they are libs. And not only are they libs, they're libs in our current political context, which means that there are certain things that they are expected to do, and the political reality of the world we live in requires them to do, So, yeah. Punky Gal, I don't agree with the stance that like AOC is tacking right to like win the Senate seat. I think she is aiming to win that Senate seat, but I don't see the rightward shift. Yeah, I think AOC is likely being set up to be kind of the torchbearer for progressive politics in the aftermath of Bernie. I wouldn't be surprised if like she goes for Schumer's Senate seat and from there goes to either a VP spot or more likely like guns for governor of New York. but we're looking at like, you know, quite a ways in the future. Yeah, Pramila Jayapal, I think Ilhan Omar, I think they all have really good futures. Yeah, I think that's part of it, Shadamar. Like, it is difficult, I think, for a lot of people who are very politically brained to realize sometimes when a speech is not, when they're not the intended audience for a speech, you know? So I think that that is one of the core difficulties. I also think that, like, I think it could have been better in a lot of different ways, and obviously it's very disappointing how she chose to handle, and how the DNC by extension chose to handle Palestinian representation at the DNC, which is to say that they explicitly said that no Palestinian would be allowed to take the stage, which, it's 2024. The fact that you're barring an entire ethnic group from being on stage at your political event should be completely fucking unacceptable.